What former dynasty darling might be back on the radar in 2020? Which AFC West running back could take a big leap towards being a star this season? And could an aging future Hall of Famer be on your must-draft list this year? Plus, the $100,000 2019-2020 inaugural Football Guys Playoff Challenge winners Jim Cox and Jeff Everage are here to discuss how they assembled the winning roster and what it was like flipping $35 into $100,000. Hey, we've got a great show for you. Dave Gerzak is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Everybody, if you got what it takes.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for football analysis from the best fantasy players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Dave Gerzak.
With the master rhymer, that's the lead behind the video rapper. You know the top rhymer, tapper.
Thanks so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations to each and every one of you, Balkaholics and Gerzakanatics. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle, Dave Gerzak. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to take a closer look at that Tampa Bay Bucks passing game, what Giants wideout we prefer in FFPC drafts, and then Jim Cox and Jeff Everage are going to drop in to talk about how they won the $100,000 grand prize in the inaugural 2019-2020 Football Guys Playoff Challenge. Dave, welcome. It's a Thursday. It's a little bit out of sync for us, but I feel like we can get this done. This is always a weird time of year because we haven't switched into full-on dynasty preview mode, which we will be here shortly in the next few weeks. And I feel like we're caught in limbo. We're caught in the in-between. This is fantasy purgatory between the 2019 and the 2020 seasons. We're still recapping, but we got a bunch of FFPC drafts going off that we want to talk about ADP with, too.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of a fun time in that, it gives us freedom to do whatever we want. We can talk about whatever we feel like. I need to get going on 2020 players.
Do you feel like you need to? I think you're well in your wheelhouse of when you normally do it.
Well, I am in my wheelhouse when I normally do it, which is coming up.
Right. Okay. I was looking at the Bucky Brooks from NFL.com put out his top 5 at every position, and I was like, oh, it's got my juices flowing. I got to look at my draft picks again. And then I was actually looking at some of my teams, my dynasty teams. They're in some good shape. I don't want to brag, but they're in really good shape. Nice. I'm very excited for this 2020 season.
That's awesome, actually. Isn't it exciting instead of looking at the cupboard being bare?
Well, this is the other thing, too, is at this point of the year, you're looking at your dynasty teams, and either you're kind of like awash in fantasy greatness for how you did the previous season, but you're a little bit worried about how this season's going to go, or you've already spent most of last season building up to this year, and you're excited for how it's going to. So I think this is hope springs eternal. It's part of the reason that a lot of these dynasty orphans have been flying off the boards.
Yeah, and they've been moving. We're down to like 40-some right now, actually, I think it is. And there's still good teams out there with really good prices, actually.
If you want to pick up one of those teams, go to myffpc.com/dynasty. You can check out a list of all the dynasty orphans that are out there, along with the asking price. The entire rosters and picks are slated on there. Make your bids. I know Davis Maddock, our buddy, actually picked one up this week. Yep. And he was tweeting about the work that he's going to put into that. Can't wait to see how that turns out. He's very confident, as well he should be. And, by the way, Best Ball League's still open, too. $35, $77, and $250. Super flexes, standards, and what's the one? Double ups are all available at myffpc.com. Hop in one of those for sure.
Well, we might have an opening in a couple of my private leagues.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Dynasty?
Yep.
How are the teams? Strong to very strong?
The one team actually had low victory points, but it has potential. I mean, he has some decent players. He might be able to get a discount. And then the other one, I'm not really sure.
What leagues are these? Can you say the names on the air, or is that bad?
Stoned, I think is one.
Yeah.
And Pirate Swag
I used to be in that one.
Yeah.
I used to be in Pirate Swag.
Yeah, the Pirate Swag team, that's the one where he didn't have many victory points. I don't know what his draft picks look like, so I hope, if they're bad, then they're bad.
And that used to be a 14, and now it's a 12-teamer?
That was Fantasy Sharks.
Oh, is it Pirate Swag is still a...
Well, it's always been a 12.
So, okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure.
I was in it, and I don't even remember, so clearly the
Stone League is actually a cool league.
Why don't you... those are both on MFL?
Yeah.
I'll check them out. I'll look at them.
All right, yeah.
All right. I want to shout out to the chat room. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in there at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman, at David Gerzak is where to find us on Twitter. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour, and then 347-426-3682, 347-GAME-OVA if you want to give us a call and talk to us tonight. HighStakesFantasyFootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. If you have any questions, post them in the chat room, send us in the email, or tweet at us. And our mutual friend and producer Rob, as well as my best friend and audio engineer Bryce, will do their best to get to those questions later on coming up in the fantasy feedback segment on the show. I want to thank Football Guys, Roto World, and Rob, of course, for tonight's rundown. Let's kick things off with a former Florida State player. What a great way to start things off. NFL Network.
Got his degree?
I don't know about that.
Obviously.
I hope not, because he was a running back. Like, you shouldn't be, unless you graduate in 3 years, you shouldn't. If you have NFL aspirations, you shouldn't be around for your
Good point.
NFL Network's Ian Rappaport says the Falcons are, quote, weighing on for moving on for Devontae Freeman. Rappaport says that decision is up in the air. It is a $3.5 million cap savings if they release Devontae Freeman, who will be 28 years old before the season starts. That would leave the Falcons with Ito Smith, Brian Hill, who's an exclusive rights free agent, and then a bevy of draft picks or potentially a free agent signing that they would add in that backfield. Devontae Freeman rushed 184 times for 656 yards and 2 touchdowns, a career-low 3.7 yards per carry, and that was 51% of the team's carries last year. So I don't think there's much to report here, Dave, on, hey, what do you think of Devontae Freeman? I think the story here is, what are you looking at with Ito Smith? How much stock are you putting into him from a dynasty angle? Or are you convinced that they are going to be adding somebody in free agency or the draft that will be carrying the lion's share of the workload going forward in 2020?
Yes, the latter. I think they're going to either draft someone or maybe pick up a free agent if they're cheap, but I think they're going to draft someone fairly early. There
is no fantasy value in Ito Smith, or very little fantasy value in Ito Smith and Brian Hill right now, in your opinion.
In my opinion, yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to trade for him, go nuts.
I happen to agree with you. I just wanted to get that out there. Devontae Freeman, you're not going to get anything for him. Hold on to him, see where he lands, right?
If I owned him, yeah, that's where I would be with him. But, I mean, I've always considered him a mediocre talent at best. He's had a couple good seasons, or a few good seasons. I don't know.
I actually, spoiler alert, when we total up the I Got 5 on it board, I actually lost the Devontae Freeman bet to you this season. I was betting on the bounce back. You know what I've noticed about the I Got 5 on it boards on this show? I tend to have staunch stances on certain players, and then we'll make a wager on it. And then after I make the wager, you'll sort of talk me out of my position on them, and then I'll lose the wager, but I won't have him on any of my teams. That's what I've noticed over the years.
I guess that's good, right?
I hardly had any. I had like one Devontae Freeman team this past year.
Good.
It was, yeah, it ended up working out really well.
He's had 2 good seasons, his age 23 and 24 season, 2015, 2016. 2017, he did okay, but I don't think you would have been really super happy about where you drafted him.
And the other thing to keep in mind, too, like, this is a high-powered offense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you should have good seasons. I mean, if you're the running back for that team, I mean, you know, you look at what Aaron Jones did this past year for the Packers. I mean, I feel like Packers running backs should be doing that every single year when they have so many points that they're scoring.
Right. Well, especially with LaFleur's offense. Now, I'm totally with you on that. All right, so that's how we feel about Devontae Freeman. Let's move on and talk about a dynasty guy that we were hyping up quite a bit last year. The Athletics' Matt Barrows reports that Jalen Hurd is expected to be ready for OTAs. Hurd had a back injury, which apparently is healed. He's doing well. And remember, this is a guy that played I can't remember how this was. He played running back he played receiver. No, he played running back, then he switched to receiver, and then he was drafted as a receiver as well. Did not play at all in the regular season after he injured his back. And he's going to be 24 years old by the time the season starts, Dave. I know you liked Jalen Hurd quite a bit last year. I think the shine has worn off, though, a little bit, especially given what we've seen in that Niners backfield.
Well, yeah, I mean, we liked him until he got hurt, and then at that point he was just off our board completely because there was just no point. But I like him from a dynasty perspective, actually, as well as from to some extent from a redraft perspective. Debo did so well that there's not going to be a ton of room for him, and actually he does a lot of the same things that I think that they would have. Like, Debo does a lot of the same things that I think they wanted her to do. running the ball and just doing these, various types of things.
Yeah.
But Hurd has that talent. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit as a running back, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, he was.
And he did really well in the SEC as a running back. And then he transitioned to wide receiver because he thought it would create a longer NFL career.
And he transferred to Baylor, too.
Yeah, so, I mean, I like Hurd. I mean, the team drafted him highly. They have draft capital involved. So, and I think right now he's cheap. I mean, the only people talking about him are probably us and, some other low-rated podcast.
Think about what you would have to give up for him, Dave, and think about the talent in this year's NFL draft. Would you give up a third-rounder for Jalen Hurd right now, or is that too much?
I mean, a third-rounder is basically kind of not worth a ton. I know you're going to say it's a super deep draft. It always is, right?
Well, not always, but I don't think I would, just me personally.
Yeah, I think with Hurd, though, you can probably get him either like off the cut pile or for a fourth. I don't know that you have to spend a third to get Jalen Hurd.
FFPC, you should for sure be able to get him off the cut pile. Who kept him around? You know what I mean?
He's going to be getting cut in almost all at least.
Moving on, another Florida State guy. God, it's already our best show ever since we're talking about all this Seminoles. Jameis Winston underwent LASIK surgery to fix his vision, according to Pro Football Talk on Twitter. Go ahead with your joke.
Did he finally save up the $4,000?
Hilarious. Winston is a free agent right now. He's looking for a new contract. He's 26 years old. If you remember, I remember this back in his Florida State days. He was always squinting towards the sideline, to get the play in or looking at because he has nearsightedness. Bruce Arians, his coach, quote, he can't read the scoreboard, but he can see the guys in front of him. After watching Jameis Winston last year, Dave, I question the validity of that argument. I don't know if he can see the guys in front of him.
What is it? You should have to get an eye exam as part of your incoming physical every year, too, shouldn't you?
Well, maybe he did, and he just failed it.
No, I mean, like 3 years ago. If he was squinting 3 years ago or whenever it was, I mean, since forever.
Well, he's nearsighted. Are you going to cut a guy because he's nearsighted?
No, but if you're – okay, if you're a quarterback and you're nearsighted and you have like 2200 vision or 2150 or 2100.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wouldn't you get LASIK? I mean, isn't that what baseball players
I would have.
do? So
I don't know why he does
spin
it.
on the ball better. If you're an Air Force pilot, do you think it makes sense to have 20/20 vision?
See, now they would cut you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just the point. But Air Force pilots don't make $20 million a year. Frankly,
Maverick did.
Who's more important? I mean, from entertaining millions and making millions.
Quarterback.
A quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, good God. Anyway, there you go. My Insta rant over.
He threw for 5,100 yards and 33 touchdowns last year, good for first and second in the NFL, respectively. However, 30 interceptions. My God, I'm going to say it again. 30 interceptions last year. Absolutely insane. Dave, here's why I bring this up. I think if you were to...
Can you read the last sentence in the article?
It's unknown if anyone associated with the team requested Winston have the surgery. So that's funny.
I just think
that's according to Roto World.
Good job, guys.
So the one thing I will bring up with Winston is you look at that Tampa Bay offense, Evans, Godwin, Howard, Ronald Jones. It's flush with talent. And the two, I don't know if anybody's offering odds on this in any reputable sports book. Probably not. But I would think that the odds-on favorites are the two quarterbacks that are mentioned most as being the starting quarterback for the Bucs next year are both Jameis Winston and Phillip Rivers. If you own Godwin or Evans or any of those Tampa Bay guys, wouldn't you rather have Winston come back for another year or over Phillip Rivers?
Yes, you get the certainty of the past performance.
5,000 yards last year.
And all the touchdowns. And what do you care about the picks if you're an owner of
Godwin
or Evans? I mean, you kind of don't want him to throw as many so you get more touchdown opportunities. But other than that, I mean, because they're drive stoppers.
Which, by the way, it's not like Phillip Rivers was exactly a clean sheet last year as far as picks go.
He's so old and he just shot puts the ball all over the place.
That's the problem I have with it.
I do too, man. I would downgrade both those guys if Rivers came over, even though I think Rivers would do fine, just not 5,100 yards fine.
Right. Watching Winston and Rivers throw football, you probably didn't see Iron Man 3, but there's a scene in there where this kid makes a little potato gun. That's like Phillip Rivers. And then at the end, Iron Man develops a Mark II potato gun for him, and it's like the creme de la creme. That's Winston throwing the football.
There you go, yeah.
So there's a huge difference between arm strength.
And from a fantasy perspective, we're saying, not from NFL.
But that's my point. Like, I would much rather have the guy who's gripping it and ripping it down the field, the Godwin and Evans, rather than the guy who's just shot-putting it over the middle.
That may not be what the team wants, though. I mean, because clearly they don't want a person who's throwing 33 picks.
They don't, but they let him play last year, throwing 30 picks.
Who was the backup?
I have Ryan Griffin, I think it was. It wasn't anybody great. So, Final point I want to get to before we get to our 100,000 heirs talking on the show here tonight, Jim Cox and Jeff Everage. They're up next in just a couple of minutes. Jets wide receiver Robbie Anderson, Dave. I don't know if you knew this. He's a free agent. He's going to be highly sought after in the free agent market. He was fourth in 2019. He was fourth since 2016 in the league with 112 targets of over 20 yards. The Jets quarterbacks completed passes to him on those at a 28.3% accuracy, which is second to last in the NFL. If this guy lands with even a semi-competent quarterback, he is going to go boffo for fantasy, and he's going to pay off big time. Right now, in FFPC drafts, if you look at his ADP, he's going off as the 43rd receiver drafted in the 10th round. Give me all the Robbie Anderson in the 10th round at that point. It's going to be very difficult for him to be in a worse situation than he was last year. Very difficult.
Well, I mean, given those stats, they clearly can't get him the ball deep. But I mean, that's part of the question. Is he just a one-trick pony? So I don't know how much interested I am in taking him with, given the uncertainty where he's going to go, and 43rd wide receiver. That's close to starting.
Yeah, depending upon what you do.
It's your second flex. I don't know.
To me, that's usually when I'm looking at like my first bench player, I guess, because I'll formulate my starting lineup and then I'll usually get a quarterback or two by then, and then I'm looking at.
I'm guessing there's someone else that would want around in that spot, but I mean, I guess he could do fine.
Just to give you an idea, these are the three receivers going right after him in drafts: Brandon Cooks, Curtis Samuel, and Marvin Jones. I know you'd rather have Samuel, right? Well, I guess I don't know because I don't know who the quarterback is going to be in Carolina right now.
I'd probably look at all three of those guys, even Cooks. But in Marvin Jones, you don't know what the situation is either. But what Marvin Jones always seems to do is just produce.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, he really does. He's always. What was he? He was probably like wide receiver 18 again last year, or something like that.
Well,
he was like
remember
wide receiver
he got
12 or 14 the year before.
Well, I would have to look at where he was because he got hurt and missed a good chunk of the end of the season. But you're right. Up until that point, he was doing very well.
He had like a 4-touchdown game.
He did have a 4-touchdown game. That's absolutely right.
I know for sure because he was on one of my benches.
That stinks. You know what doesn't stink? Our next guest here, and I want to bring him in right now, ladies and gentlemen. Coming in to the show tonight, these guys have been playing fantasy football, both with and against each other in multiple home redraft and keeper leagues for the last decade and a half. They joined an FFPC Dynasty League in 2016. Hey, that's right, when Robbie Anderson was dropping all those deep balls, Dave.
Nice.
They have a third place, a first place, and a second place finish in that league. They've played multiple playoff challenges and have won a few $1,000s between them, but this year was by far their biggest ever win. Please welcome in the $100,000 Football Guys Playoff Challenge winners, Jim Cox and Jeff Everage. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, guys.
We're doing well. Congratulations on the 100K. I want to talk quite a bit about that, obviously, as we pick your brains tonight. But before we get into that, Jim, can you tell us what you do for a living? And then after he's done, Jeff, can you go ahead?
I'm in the oil and gas industry. I'm a drilling engineer. Been doing that for about 20-some years. So.
And I am also in the oil and gas industry. I'm a VP of sales for a service company, which is exactly how Jim and I met 15-plus years ago.
That's all, guys. So now I'm going to ask a personal question now. I have a 16-year-old daughter who's kind of interested in engineering, and I'm like, hey, like petroleum engineering, pays like bonkers. Pays really great. So first of all, I assume that's correct. Is that right? Petroleum engineers, those guys are making pretty good bank, right?
That is correct.
So then my question to her was, well, how do you write the essay for you're getting into college? Let's say you want to go to Texas A&M, and you say, hey, I want to get a petroleum engineering. Climate change is fake. I want to get as much oil out of the ground as I possibly can. What do you think? Do you have a better idea for an essay?
Short and sweet. I think that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I would say,
that might get you in.
I would say that's
at Texas A&M, absolutely.
I do believe, as far as for petroleum engineers goes, that we're probably on we're towards the end of our cycle. It looks like. I mean, as far as for being able to make the big bucks like we've been making for the last several years.
You know what? I'm not going to disagree totally, but I think you guys still got some. There's still some stuff in the ground.
Still some cash to be squeezed out.
Some what are wildcats? What do they call that?
What?
When they strike oil.
I don't know. I'd have that. Yeah.
Whatever the hell it is. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
You're
So
absolutely correct.
So tell us again how you guys got hooked up. Just as friends. Turning that $35,000 into $100,000.
Jim, do you want to go first?
Yeah, Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. So Jim and I met back in, I guess, 2005, 2004. We got into it was a drillers league, actually, together. We were playing against each other. And then we started another keeper league, and we're playing against each other. And we finally we were both of one mind as far as how we approached fantasy football, so we figured we would join forces, getting us some higher stake stuff. We found FFPC. We started our Dynasty League 3 years ago, or is it 3 or 4? 3 years ago. We actually signed up for our second Dynasty League last year, so we have 2 now, and have been great friends, like I say, for 15 years. Jim, you can add on to that.
No, I think that's right. I mean, it's actually 4 years on the first one, but we battled against each other and saw each other doing waiver wire pickups and everything else to make it to where we understood that we thought alike and pissed each other off in the redraft leagues, battling each other out on the waiver wire.
That's great.
That's good stuff. That's good.
Figured,
well, listen,
we figured we would have more fun playing together than we would playing against each other.
Well, and playing together for $100,000, certainly that would be a lot of fun for me. Absolutely, and congrats to both of you on that huge payday. Jim, I know you guys you worked on multiple lineups in that competition. I want to speak directly to this one, if I can here. Can you sort of take us through the process on how you and Jeff sort of ultimately settled on this roster?
Yeah, we actually entered 4 teams. And we settled in on Baltimore and Kansas City as being our Super Bowl guys out of the AFC, and New Orleans and San Francisco in the NFC. Started at quarterback. Didn't want anything really to do with Jimmy G, so we had 2 of Lamar, 1 Drew Brees, and 1 Mahomes, which ended up being the good one. And then obviously looked at teams with we thought we'd be playing multiple games. Ended up fading both Minnesota and Philadelphia in all 4 of them. So got lucky, I guess, and picked the right combo there in the 4th team.
Jim, was this was this a long, arduous process? Did you guys sweat over these lineups, or did you just kind of like were you very methodical and like, okay, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Okay, they look good. All right, good luck. We'll see how it goes. Or I mean, was it that simple? Or was there a sweat? Was there some heavy analysis going on?
There was definitely sweat. We threw the 4 teams in pretty quick, and then probably the Friday before Wild Card Weekend, sat on the phone for about an hour and a half discussing, and finally just got to the point where if we keep talking about it, we're going to end up with the same lineup in all 4 of them, which obviously we didn't want to do. So we cut it short there. I mean, we just had a few players, off of Kansas City. Obviously it was Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill. New Orleans was Kamara, Thomas, and Breeze. Really Green Bay, Adams and Jones. Mostert and Kittle from San Francisco were the only 2 options we really looked at. So just kind of did a change up between all 4 of them before we condensed it down to 1. So we finally stopped talking, but it took a while.
Yeah,
and I should have mentioned. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so initially of the 4 teams, Jim filled out 1, I filled out 1, and then the last 2 we filled out together. The third entry was basically we I mean, we faded everything. We went completely contrarian to. We're like, you know what? These are the ones that sometimes win these things, and that it wasn't the case. That one I think finished dead last of all four of them. But the fourth lineup, I mean, up until the championship weekend, that one was not doing very well until Mostert and Mahomes absolutely went off. So anyway, it was a fun process, but like.
I should have mentioned too, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I should have mentioned to anybody listening. This was Jim and Jeff's winning lineup here. Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, 3 running backs: Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Raheem Mostert. 3 receivers: Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Lockett, and then Mark Andrews at tight end, Stephen Hauschka at kicker. Defense was New England Patriots, and a slim, very slim 0.8 point victory for you guys over. I can't remember. Redbird Doctor 06. His name is in my head. I know he's from Wisconsin.
Frozen Tundra 235.
No. That's
his team name.
Yeah, that's his team name. I can't remember who it was. It's on the tip of my tongue. But sweating that out there, that had to be insanely close. But at least we get to know the knowledge of it. Now, Dave,
Michael Gilly?
Yeah, that's who it is. Michael Gill. That's who it is. Dave, ask him. Let's talk about the sweat that was actually going on, because we had last week we had on the $500,000 winner Austin Martin. It was a semi sweat, but he won comfortably by like 11 points.
Right.
This was not an 11-point victory.
Very true, guys. But before I ask this question, let me just, in case you didn't read in case you didn't compare the scoring on the email. Had you entered the 500K contest, you would not have taken the 500K.
Right.
You would have taken second
place.
So that's cool in a way,
Correct.
in that you don't feel screwed, right? So you can sleep well.
Right.
Would have been another $50,000.
Yeah, it would have been $50K.
Yeah, but we've talked about this. We would never have put 4 $200 lineups in. So the fact that our fourth lineup in the football guys deal at $35 was the one that won us. I mean, actually going into conference championship weekend, we had 2 other teams that we thought had a much better chance to at least get some money out of. So, we talked about that and seen that we would have never put $800 in versus the $140 that we did.
There you go.
Good. That worked out.
That works. That's part of why we added that second contest. Anyway,
exactly.
So the real question. So this is for Jeff. You and Jim were in 3rd place in the competition going into the Super Bowl. Can you guys take us through how you and Jim decided to watch the game and what it was like seeing your team and you guys move up to 1st place?
So Jim lives in Tulsa, and I live in Houston. And I almost had him convinced to – he was actually out of town for work. I almost had him convinced to fly in to Houston for the Super Bowl, but work would not allow it. So we basically were on the phone with each other during the game. The funny part is my wife tolerates fantasy football. She knows it's one of my pastimes, my passions. It's one of my biggest hobbies. But I have never seen her stare at a laptop for the entire game like she did that night because she knew what was on the line.
That's awesome.
And no, we were sweating it. So the 2 teams that were ahead of us had Mostert and Kelsey. Yes. And we were 3.2 points behind them, and the points double for the Super Bowl. So we needed to Mahomes needed to outscore Kelsey by 1.6 points. We thought that was pretty doable. The other one was Kittle, the owner behind us. He needed 10 points more out of Kittle than Mostert. Once Mostert scored his touchdown, and once Mahomes rushed that touchdown in, I was feeling pretty good. I mean, obviously it wasn't over until it was over, but we had about 20 people at the Super Bowl party at my house rooting us on. Half of them didn't understand football or fantasy football, but they did understand $100,000. So
that's awesome.
That is great.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. I remember the thrill back in 2008, Dave, when we cashed that big one. But it's so much more amplified when you're talking about investing $140 into this competition, and then it's such a short sprint, and then when it's that close, where it's Kelsey versus Mahomes. in the Super Bowl, and you don't know what's going to happen, especially when you consider double points. God, what a rush that was.
Yeah, it was a very close finish, it looks like.
Insane. We're talking with Jim Cox and Jeff Everage, the $100,000 winners in the inaugural Football Guys Playoff Challenge here on the HSFF Hour this week. On a points per game basis, let's look forward to 2020 here. Jeff, on a points per game basis last season, Josh Jacobs finished as the 16th ranked running back. He's actually going in FFPC best ball drafts in the mid-second at the 206 as the 11th running back off the board. Do you see him, given what the Raiders have, do you see him making a significant enough leap to pay off that? And I guess what, in a roundabout way, I'm asking you is would you feel comfortable taking Josh Jacobs as the 11th running back off the board in the mid-second?
So I hope so. We have Jacobs in our second dynasty league. I hope he does take a step forward. I would say yes. I mean, he played hurt most of last year with that bad shoulder, and in the first half of the season, I mean, he was well into the top 10. So if the shoulder's right this year, I think as even if you take wide receiver in the first round and you come back and get him as your starting running back, I would feel comfortable there. There's too many question marks with the guys around him.
Yeah, I mean, and just to give everybody kind of an idea of what's going on with Josh Jacobs as far as FFPC best balls go and who's going after him, as far as running backs, the next three guys off the board are Leonard Fournette, Miles Sanders, and Austin Eckler. So I can certainly see the upside with Josh Jacobs over both Fournette, Sanders, and Eckler. And we still know where Eckler is going to be playing football this year. Plus, I heard and I don't know how true this is, that the Jaguars might be moving on for Leonard Fournette. I didn't even realize that he was a free agent or anything like that, which is insane to me that they would make that call. But whatever. I'm not here to judge personnel moves, but I am here to say that I'd much rather have Jacobs than Leonard Fournette, and they're basically going back-to-back in best ball drafts. Shifting our focus to rookie drafts, though, Dave.
Yeah, so Jim, I know you guys are in two dynasty leagues, and actually I just since I am an overall admin, kind of like the Wizard of Oz, I was able to look at one of your accounts, and I see that one of your dynasty leagues you have almost no rookie picks, but your other one you have first, second, you have your first, second, third, you have the 109. It looks like. So have you guys been talking about rookies yet? Who you might take at the 109 in that one draft, or maybe trading up at all, or any thoughts on the rookies so far this year?
Yeah, and in that other one that you're talking about, we made some late moves to trade for Julio and Devontae Adams, trying to go all in on this year. But in the other one where we have 1-9, we're actually we've been talking about maybe making the trading Jacobs actually to try to get a few more first, second round picks out of it. So looking at that, as far as the back half, it looks like it's probably going to be a receiver, which is what we need. We have 5, pretty stud running backs. Our worst running back in that league is Ingram as our 5th. So
very nice.
There's some chances to get decent receivers there at 1-9. Obviously, we'd love to get some Lamb or some Judy, but they're probably going to go off in the top 4 or 5. So this draft seems to have gone back, I guess, back in the when we were drafting for this season. 2020 looked like it was going to be running back heavy, and it seems to have turned the corner with a bunch of those guys deciding to go back to school, and now it's more wide receiver heavy than it was, 8 months ago.
Jeff, I'm going to just off the top of my head, and I don't know if you have any particular allegiances as far as college football goes, but I'm going to toss out some names here. TCU wide receivers, these are all wide receivers. TCU's Jalen Rieger, Texas's Colin Johnson, and then Baylor's Denzel Mims. Do you have any thoughts that you could share on any of those players or any quote-unquote inside info or anything, given that you're down in the heart of Texas and probably get a chance to watch those guys play on Saturday a little bit more than Dave or I would?
Well, so as far as college allegiance, I bleed orange and blue. I'm a Florida Gator. I'm sorry, I heard y'all talking Florida State talk before we came on. As far as watching college football, unfortunately, because I am all in on the fantasy side, I've pretty much agreed that my Sundays are my football days and my Saturdays unless the Gators are playing somebody, that I want to watch, our family day. So I really haven't got to watch much. I mean, Jim can speak more to the college, watching the college games, especially in the Big 12. So, yeah, I wish I had more insight. I'm going to pay attention to the combine. And then obviously it's all about, landing spots where these guys go. That's going to increase or decrease their value.
Totally fine. I know I put you on the spot there, but now that I know you're a Florida fan, what about Van Jefferson? Do you think he's going to carve out being a pretty good possession receiver in the pros, given how polished a route runner he was for Florida?
Well, unfortunately, Florida doesn't have a incredible track record translating wide receivers to the NFL of late that I can off the top of my head. There's a couple. So, I think he's got a shot to your point as a possession wide receiver. I mean, obviously the NFL is the best of the best, and he's going to have to go prove himself. But I'm rooting for him. We'll see. We'll see where he lands.
I'd
love
Jim,
to see him come down to Houston.
If he's a slot guy, obviously in PPR, those guys could be monsters, being able to catch, 6 to 8 passes a week for 60-some yards and maybe take one to the house. So,
speaking of monsters and players,
run his route.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's something that they don't coach too well in college by and large. Jim, speaking of guys who can take it to the house and have been monsters, CeeDee Lamb, I don't know if you're an OU fan, but this is a guy that could potentially be the number one receiver off the board. He probably won't be. He's probably going to be like the second, maybe the third, probably the second. But what can you tell us about CeeDee Lamb and what kind of career you envision him having at the next level?
Well, I watch a lot of OU football, so, he looks phenomenal. But, D.D. Westbrook also did the same kind of stuff a few years back when he was in that offense. I think he can do it for sure. It's just a matter of what spot and if he's got the right mindset to, translate it on. A lot of these guys coming out are still by far better athletes than anybody they play against. So now they're going to have to go against athletes that are virtually the same, if not better than them, and they're going to have to figure it out.
Good stuff, guys. I appreciate the Dynasty insight here in mid-February. Always good to talk about that. I want to get to some listener emails here that came in for you. The first one's for Ron in Cleveland. And I'm going to pitch this to Jim. I'll let you answer this one. After Mark Andrews' breakout in 2019, are you willing to sink a late third-round pick into him for his services this season? Thank you for the email. Ron in Cleveland. Mark Andrews currently going in FFPC drafts at the 311 as the number 4 tight end off the board, if I'm remembering correctly from when I looked at this. Yes, number 4 tight end off the board
number 4.
At the 311. Yeah, there you go. So, Jim, does that sound like a good spot where you'd get into business with him?
I think so. Most of our drafts, we kind of fade tight ends and quarterbacks till later. But if I was going to be picking a tight end in that 3rd to 4th round area, Andrews, he definitely stepped up. Hurst finally started coming on towards the end of the year, so that's I guess a little bit of a question mark, seeing as he was drafted higher than Andrews, 2 years ago. But I think Andrews at 311 would be a decent pick as long as you had a stud running back and stud receiver before you picked him.
Jeff, I'll throw this next one to you. This is from John in Boca Raton. Hey, guys, is Michael Gallup for real? I know he was huge at Dak Prescott, churning out quite the passing attack last year, but I don't know if I can get on board with him in the 7th round. It feels like I am paying for last year's stats. Nice job on the 100K. Thank you for the email, John in Boca Raton, as I look up Michael Gallup's ADP right now, and he is indeed going at the 708 as the 32nd receiver drafted in FFPC Best Ball. So is he for real, Jeff, in your opinion? Is this a guy that's going to produce like he did in 2019 for another season?
It's funny you bring Gallup up. We're actually talking about potentially trying to trade for him in one of our dynasty leagues. I think a lot's going to depend with Gallup on what happens with Cooper, or if Cooper goes, who they get in to be across from Gallup. But no, I think Gallup's got the talent, and he showed last year that he can produce. I think Dak's going to get only better, depending on how the offensive, the new offensive scheme goes with the new coaching regime. So yeah, I mean, I would say Gallup in the 7th round is a good value.
Dave, you on board Michael Gallup in the 7th round?
No, I never really liked Gallup that much, but I mean, this is the second year that he just had, right?
Yep.
On a points per game basis, he finished actually as wide receiver 17 if you throw out Antonio Brown's one game.
Right.
So 17, so you're getting a 15 spot finish discount just because it's a new coaching staff.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a year better, a year more mature. So going from a second to third year, there's usually a jump there. And like you guys just said, Dak Prescott's going to be a little bit better, I would think, too.
And to Jeff's point, we don't know what's going to go on with Mari Cooper. I mean, there's a chance that he's not there. And I was shocked when I saw this, Dave. Randall Cobb is the number 3 receiver there last year. 55 for like 850 yards last year.
That's pretty solid.
And it's insane that he put up those numbers, and Gallup was still an 1,100-yard receiver.
And Witten was like the 12th tight end, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like Ezekiel Elliott fell off the face of the earth. I mean, maybe he had a down season by his standards, but he was still great. That Dallas offense was awesome.
Yes, it was.
And now you get Big Mac McCarthy coaching them.
Big Matt McCarthy. We got mini Mike Bloomberg and Big Matt McCarthy.
Big Mac McCarthy, yeah.
Anyway, so guys, we actually have questions here. So I'm going to give this one to Jeff, and then Jim, you can go next. So we're looking for sleepers and busts, more or less. So we're looking for a player to be overdrafted this year, as well as a sleeper that you guys are going to try and target late. So we'll go Jeff first, then Jim.
Okay, so overdrafted player, I think Lamar Jackson's going to be way overdrafted, just like Mahomes was, based on his performance in 18. I mean, not that he couldn't put up incredible numbers, but there's no way his draft stock should be as high as it is. I think he will be overdrafted. The underdrafted player, we were talking about tight ends earlier. I think Jim and I both really, really like Ian Thomas this year. And I would actually not take Andrews in the 3rd round. I'd wait and grab Ian Thomas in the 12th round. I think he could be this year's Mark Andrews. And then one other one would be Deontay Johnson in Pittsburgh. I think he's going to have a phenomenal second year with Big Ben back across from Juju.
All right. Ian Thomas, Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, and if you were drafting in an FFPC league, David, and you had a late first-round pick, according to ADP, you could get Ian Thomas in the late 11th and then come back with Deontay Johnson in the early 12th. I love both those values for sure this year. That's really, really good. Jim, go ahead with yours.
Well, I've looked at it, and it looks like Gurley and Kenyon Drake are both going like mid-3rd, RB 14, 15. Well, I mean, where everything sounds, who knows if Gurley's even going to be on the Rams, and Drake's a free agent. He had the awesome end of the year, which actually cost us the championship. But I don't know if he's going to be re-signed with the Cardinals or not. So those are two that I think are being overdrafted. Definitely Gurley for sure is being overdrafted as a, high-end RB2. And you guys kind of stole a little bit of my thunder in the beginning of the show. I think Robbie Anderson going in the end of the 10th round as a wide receiver 43, especially – as a free agent, as long as he doesn't re-sign with the Jets and goes maybe to like a Philadelphia or Houston to be their second wideout, he could put up phenomenal numbers and at least be in the top, 24 for sure.
Yeah, I love it. I as it stands right now, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be targeting Robbie Anderson a lot in the 10th round. And certainly there's other guys that if I was diversifying my portfolio, I might go a couple of different ways. But mostly I really like Robbie Anderson in the 10th. Guys, one last question before we let you go tonight. $100K, awesome payday for you guys. Jim, I'll let you go first. Do you have any plans on how you're going to spend that cash? And then Jeff, let us know what you plan on doing with your half of the loot.
Well, with mine, probably going to end up buying a newer car for my girlfriend. She's got a pretty old car, and we just have a new 1-year-old or almost 1-year-old, so need to get her something that is a little more safe and reliable than what she's driving right now. So that's probably what the majority of my cash is going to go for.
Nice.
And whatever my wife wants to spend it on. No, I'm joking. We are actually saving up. We're saving up for potentially buying a new house this year. So this is going to be a nice chunk addition towards the down payment for that. So couldn't have come at a better time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very responsible, gentlemen. You are. This is
disappointing.
Exactly.
This is terrible.
This is exactly what the significant others want to hear on our Valentine's Day weekend show, Dave. These guys are
right, Valentine's Day.
Earning kudos. You've earned our kudos. Thanks so much for letting us talk fantasy with you guys tonight. I want to wish you best of luck in your dynasty leagues and in the playoff challenges next year, really in all your leagues. Thanks so much for hopping aboard, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
We appreciate it,
thanks,
guys. Thank you all for having us.
Thanks
You
so
bet.
much.
That's Jim Cox. That's Jeff Everage, the $100,000 Football Guys Playoff Challenge co-champions, I guess you could say, the inaugural FPC Playoff Challenge
You guys are great.
winners. Yeah,
I
good
like
stuff
having,
from
I
them.
like having two people on there. They're both very engaging, and you can tell they like each other.
Well,
Like they had a good banter, unlike this next 15 minutes.
Well, come on. They share one mind, and I always wondered in fantasy, and I don't know if you have any philosophy on this. Sometimes I like to co-own teams, and I've co-owned teams with a lot of people over the years. There's always something to be said for co-owning a team with a guy that does not think like you, whose decision making doesn't always line up with you. And I think sometimes over the years that has saved me from making some. Not that's a bad way of saying it. It's not saved me from making some bad decisions. It's forced me to look at things from a different angle, which I think is invaluable in fantasy football.
Yes, that's true.
Sometimes we get this tunnel vision, and approaching it from a different angle is so much better. So I always like that. All right, that said, let's move on to fantasy feedback and answer some emails from some of the listeners, Dave, this week. First one is – I'm sorry, go ahead. What?
Nothing.
No, what?
I'm not hearing any music or anything.
Oh, all right, Rob, go ahead.
If you've got a question for Eric, Dave, or tonight's guest, send them a tweet at HSFF Hour on Twitter. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Post it in the chat room during the broadcast. Hashtag your tweet with HSFF or just smack Eric in the head. That's highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com or at HSFF Hour on Twitter.
I'm excited. Let's get into it.
I always try to keep this show to a tight 60.
This is so good now.
And I oftentimes tell Rob to eschew that part, and so it's good to hear it every now and then. So there you go, Dave.
Every time.
I think everybody is better for it. Tom in Denver. What's up, Shannon and Zach? How do you guys fall in on the Noah Fant or Dallas Goedert discussion? I noticed that FFPC guys are pretty split about it in the draft rooms. Happy early Valentine's Day. Aw, thank you, Tom in Denver. And he's right. I did look at this, Dave. Noah Fant and Dallas Goedert are going back-to-back in FFPC best balls right now, best ball drafts, at the 708 and 709. Tight end 11, tight end 12. So these guys are if you wait on tight end, you're looking for a top 12 option. These are your last two chances on it. Who do you prefer here, Fant or do you prefer Goedert?
It is an interesting question. You really have to project, Fant as a rookie tight end did pretty well, considering.
Came on the second half big time, yes.
I mean, he did. I mean, realistically, he had two good games.
Okay.
On the whole season.
Right.
I mean, start like week 9, he had 20 points. I'm going to use regular PPR because that's what I have in front of me, sorry. 20.5, then a bye week, then 9.3, 4.4, 1.5, 21.3, 7.6, 3.0, and 1.4 in week 17. That's pretty not sounding that fun, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
But granted, he's a rookie, so he's got to get better. I mean, do I think he can get that much better to get to Goddard's level, and will Goddard not improve or do better? I don't know. I think I'm going to take Goddard because, you still have a higher floor, and you might even have a higher ceiling with Goddard.
I guess, and I was ready to say Fant because it just seems like, you have Miles Sanders and Alshon Jeffrey and
Ertz.
And Ertz, obviously, there. I think I'm going to say Goddard, and here's why. You look at Fant, that hit or miss battleship-like production that we've seen at the end of the season, that was all without Emmanuel Sanders on the team. He was gone by then. That was with who is supposed to be the starting quarterback this year. That was with Drew Lock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some red flags there.
And you have Wentz throwing the ball instead of Drew Lock, and that's
right.
a huge difference too. Of course, that's really the paramount question we should be asking in the first place.
Also consider this too. Denver might be looking at some pass catchers early on in the draft or in free agency too, which, the cupboard was more bare. The opportunity was there for Fant last year, and he somewhat took control of it, but mostly he didn't. So I'm going to say Goddard over Fant.
The wide receivers for Philly will continually get hurt. So you have Jeffries getting hurt all the time.
Well, Aguilar might not be back.
I wasn't even counting him as a wide receiver because he's
D-Jax probably won't be back.
And D-Jax he's going on to whatever next team wants to throw the ball deep 20 times a year.
Yep.
And then hit him 10 of the times.
I'm sure Bruce Arians will offer him a contract minimum, a veteran's minimum.
Yeah. Deshaun Jackson has made more money off being fast and getting hurt a lot. I mean, I know he puts up numbers when he's healthy, but good gracious, it's not very often.
Yeah, no, you're totally right on that.
It seems like he's a colossal bust as a draft pick all the time.
Well, what he was like is, I'm going to bring him up again, Devery Henderson. You always want these big play receivers in best ball, and I think there's 3 levels of those big play receivers in best ball. There's the Devery Hendersons, who's literally 2 for 120 and 2 touchdowns every 4 weeks. The Deshaun Jacksons, who are a little bit more consistent. He's more like a bad week for him is like 3 for 45, and then a great week for him is like 8 for 170 and 3 touchdowns. And then you have the elite tier, the icon tier, if you will, the Steve Smiths, where, what's his floor? 6 for 60? And when he was really white hot, it'd be like 12 for 203 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So I think those are the 3 levels of the big play receivers that you have, and D-Jax is certainly smack dab right in the middle of it.
So he's had his career started in 2008, and it's now 2020, so 2019. So it's a 12-year career, is that right? He has had 1 16-game season.
Oof, that's rough.
1.
And he had that kind of coming into it. I feel like he had knee issues at Cal. Yeah. And just never sort of shook him. And that's a tough thing to do. So I get it, why it's that way. But at the same time, you shouldn't be overdrafting.
Since 2014, he's had 1 season with 100 or more targets, and that's 2016 with exactly 100. And since so then he's had 0 seasons with 101 or more targets since 2013.
Yeah,
so there's Deshaun Jackson for you.
And I don't think I don't think any of our listeners are rushing to draft Deshaun Jackson, especially anymore. Honestly, I will be targeting him more than I will be ignoring him, Dave, given that I think the hate on him is so what am I drafting this guy for? At this point. In fact,
that's my question right there.
I'm going to look him up right now.
What am I drafting this guy for?
1603. I guess that's still too rich for me, but I get it.
I mean, it's pretty cheap, but still.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Steve in Rochelle Park, New Jersey, Dave. He writes, Dear Balky and Dave, given that Aaron Rodgers is normally a rock-solid draft pick, is he a must-grab at his current ADP coming off such a down year by his standards?
No.
Steve, I appreciate the email. You say no. You don't even know where he's going.
No, I don't. I don't want him.
What if I told you he was going in the 14th round? Yeah.
Right after DJ?
He's not going in the 14th round.
All right. I bet I would take him.
This is an easy fade for you then. He's QB 10 at the 903.
Yeah, I'd probably pass, I guess. Maybe.
I don't think I would. I can definitely get first of all, to answer his question, he's not must draft for me. I don't think there's ever been a quarterback that's been must draft for me. Maybe Lamar Jackson last year. That was probably the closest it ever came for me. But you look at Aaron Rodgers, I never really thought he fully embraced is the wrong word. I never really felt like he was fully in tune with Matt LaFleur's offense at any point last season. And that's not just because it was a new offense, a new head coach. The weapons that he had last year, outside of Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, I mean, they were among the worst in the NFL, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic by saying that. They were terrible. Que terrible. So, Aaron Rodgers. So you
get Adams. So they have the
I said outside of Adams and Jones, they were the worst weapons in the NFL.
You mean outside of his number 1 running back and his number 1 receiver?
You take number 1 wide receiver and number 1 running back off any NFL team this year, and I'd rather have their supporting cast than the Packers.
It's kind of that's a lot of ifs.
That's 2 players.
Yeah, it's the number one. This is the running back, which is generally one player,
Right.
and then it's the number one receiver, which is like half the targets. Maybe not half, but it's 25%.
My point is, outside of those guys, the weapons were terrible.
Okay.
They were wretched. Maybe you're a Lazard guy or Jamal Williams guy.
I'm not. But all I'm saying is that because Adams is so great, what you're really not saying is you're not saying that his overall weapons are as bad as. I mean, his weapons could have been had the top 8th best weapons in the NFL offensively, because Jones was so great and Adams was so great, even if the rest of the guys sucked.
Well,
you're not really saying much. Offense, but you're not really saying much of anything.
Well, I think I am saying something of something.
Well, I mean, but Rodgers, with an awesome player like Devontae Adams and an awesome running back like Aaron Jones, probably should have done better.
I guess
even if he has bad supporting cast.
Well, I don't know necessarily if that's true, but I will say this: because Aaron Jones was so awesome rushing the football, Aaron Rodgers was not counted on for a whole lot either. And
well, it just goes that because he's not an all-pro superstar quarterback anymore. He's gone. He's gone over the hill, and he's now going down, and he's going to keep going down going down.
I totally agree with that. I feel like he is still on the upside of that downslope, though. I think he's got quite a ways to go before it's like, all right, what are they doing here?
With him, to me, it's different than like Big Ben. Big Ben, like, just stays, if he's not hurt, he's awesome.
Yeah.
I would take I don't know where Big Ben's going compared to Rodgers, but I actually am more interested in Roethlisberger.
He's going way later.
So I'll take Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger's going later than Rodgers.
Oh, wait, it's not even close.
Yeah, so I'll take Roethlisberger.
Oh, wait, it is close. I'm sorry. I thought he was going in the 16th round for some reason. This must have adjusted. 11? He's still going after Rodgers. He's 11? QB 19 at the 11:02.
All right, yeah, it's a couple
rounds
later.
2 rounds later, and yeah, I mean, I could definitely get on.
The thing at the point where Rodgers is going is where you start to take 2 in a row anyway. If you haven't taken one, so you could take Rodgers and Roethlisberger, or Rodgers and someone else like that.
I guess here's the whole point of what I'm saying. When Brian Gutekunst, the GM for the Packers, when he has sensed a weakness, they've gone all in on it. When they needed D-backs, he drafted a ton of them. When they needed pass rushers, he went out and signed 2 of them and then used his first round pick on one. They need receivers bad this year, Dave. I could see them taking 2 receivers in the first 2 days of the draft, and all of a sudden Rodgers has Adams plus those 2 in a historically really good class of rookie wide receivers, plus Aaron Jones, and then Jay Sternberger, who, by the way, I think we've talked about this on the show. I think he's primed for a big leap forward. I really like Aaron Rodgers this coming season in the second year of that Matt LaFleur offense.
All right, well, good.
I could be wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm down.
You know who I don't like really at the spot, like we were talking about, is that Kyler Murray. Why is he 4th? I don't understand.
I'll tell you why he's 4th, because we've been talking him up on this show since he won the Heisman.
I mean, he was only the number 11 quarterback on a points per game basis last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I
know he's a rookie, and he did rush for 550 yards.
New offense, new head coach. I get it.
Not really much of a new offense, but go ahead.
But you understand what I'm saying, though. I guess it was basically what he ran at OU. But even still, you look at Kyler Murray taking a leap forward. Maybe people are big believers in Andy Isabella improving. Maybe they're big believers in Hakeem Butler being a big-time thing. He's getting Fitz back. We don't know what they're going to do with running back, as we were talking with Jim and Jeff earlier. Kenyon Drake's a free agent. God, they got to sign him. I don't see how they can let him go. But stranger things have happened.
I mean, from their perspective, they could just grab a rookie in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yeah.
I mean, possibly.
No, they definitely could. Running back, wide receiver is uber deep. Running back is very deep. This is a great rookie class as far as skill position goes.
All right, that was me that got us off on this tangent.
All right, so anyway, let's get back to Rich in Zebulon, North Carolina. He writes, which Giants receiver would you guys draft first this year, Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton? Thanks so much. That's Rich in Zebulon, North Carolina. Dave, these guys are going extremely close in drafts right now. Sterling Shepard is the 42nd wide receiver going at the 10-10, and Darius Slayton is the 41st receiver going at the 10-08. So almost back-to-back. Darius Slayton kind of came out of nowhere last season, really made a lot of plays, both with Eli Manning and with Daniel Jones. So you look at these guys, are you going for the upside in Slayton, or are you going with Steady Eddie and the Sterling Shepard, both of these guys going in the mid to late 10th?
I think I would take Shepard. He's got more draft capital. He averaged more points per game last year. He missed some time. I think his targets are more consistent as well. I mean, Slayton had a 0, I think, in week 15 here. Is that what I'm looking up?
That sounds right.
Week 16.
Okay.
So if you were counting on him in your fantasy playoffs, he gave you a big fat 0. You probably lost your game thanks to him. So I'll take Shepard.
I'm going to hedge a little bit when I answer this question. I think that if I have a heavy wide receiver squad at this point in the draft, in the mid-10th, I'm actually going to roll with Slayton and go with the upside, given that he created a lot of big plays last year. If I don't, let's say I went with 2 tight ends in the first 8 rounds, or maybe I got 3 or 4 running backs, then I'm going to go with more of like the consistent production, and I'll go with Sterling Shepard, the guy who's much more likely to get 6 for 60, 11 weeks out of the year. So that's how I would hedge on answering that question.
Well, I don't draft that way, but more power to you. Enjoy.
What do you mean you don't draft that way? This is good.
I don't do that.
Okay.
I'll take the player I'd rather have, not who cares.
Regardless of what your team looks like. Yeah. Okay, this is an interesting philosophical question. This is good. BPA, no matter what.
Whatever.
Yeah.
If I like one player better than another, I do. So.
Regardless of what your team looks like. That's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Final email.
I'm glad you approve.
Yeah, well, I do approve. No question. Peter in New York. Should Latavius Murray be drafted as more than just a handcuff this year, given Alvin Kamara's performance and injuries last season? He looks to be a steal in drafts right now. Tell me what I'm missing here. That's Peter in New York. Dave, don't look at did you already look at where he finished last year?
No.
Perfect.
I was trying to.
All right. Don't look at where he finished. I'm going to tell you where he's going right now in drafts.
I'm going to guess he finished 32 running back.
Oh, that is an excellent guess.
Okay.
29.
Yeah, right.
Running back 29 last year. He is going in the 1108 of drafts this year, Murray.
40 something.
43.
All right.
Now, I understand people want to they want to draft for upside at that point in the draft, so you will get players like this. That's an awful big disparity for Latavius Murray not going to the 11th round when we saw what he did last year. And we've also, by the way, seen what happens to these running backs that are rode pretty hard their first few years in the NFL. They tend to break down a little bit more. We saw it with Gurley. I think we're seeing it with Elliott. We saw it with David Johnson as well. I just think that Latavius Murray had 2 awesome games last year. It might be more than 2 awesome games with New Orleans this year, especially if Breeze comes back.
Yeah, I can totally get on board with that. I mean, that's one nice thing is it's nice to be able to draft a player in that spot that's going to get some production. So if you really are desperate and you need him, even if he's not having a great year, at least you can toss him in there and you can't feel terrible about it, or if you have a bye week thing.
Yeah.
But then he does have the total upside if Kamara gets hurt. So I'm all on board with that totally.
The problem with that is he's not a pass catcher, and he doesn't offer much standalone value if Kamara is healthy. But
he averaged 9.8 points per game. I mean, that is a low-end RB3.
But if you look at the averages, they spiked for a few weeks there, and he had a lot of dogs in there too.
Yes, that's right. He had 232 points. He had some big games. You're right. Very good point.
So, and that's when Kamara was out.
When he's out. All right. Very good point.
But to your point, I mean, Alexander Madison's going right by him. Tony Pollard, Royce Freeman. This is all handcuff city. Who's representing?
Well, Freeman actually. I think it does get carries regardless. I think Freeman might be a better pick.
Do you think it's closer with him and Lindsey this year?
No, well, I think that it was fairly.
It did tighten up.
It was fairly balanced even last year, even early on. He still got playing time the whole season. They drafted him for a reason. I think Lindsey is the guy that is just better and they prefer. But Freeman does get playing time.
The thing is with Lindsey, he's a smallish guy.
Yeah, right.
And that wrist thing, that was still giving him problems after he had surgery on it last year. I don't know if that's going to be a debilitating thing, but to be a running back, you got to be able to use your hand. And the wrist is connected to the hand bone, according to that song. In any event, on that note, I think we're going to end tonight's show. I want to thank Jim Cox, Jeff Everage, Dave Gerzak, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you for tuning in on this extra special Thursday night extravaganza of the HSFF Hour. We will be live next week at 10/9 Central. FFPC Playoff Challenge 4th place finisher Steve Ranigan, a long-time guy who's had a lot of success.
Ranigan's coming out.
Yeah,
right.
In the Football Guys Players Championship, a lot of other national contests. So we're going to have some fun with him next Friday.
As long as he doesn't talk baseball.
Well, no guarantees on that. I can't,
I'm going to the bathroom if you.
All right. Well, I'll let him know that no question. So that is coming up next Friday at 10/9 Central. I want to remind everybody, if you're looking to play a little dynasty fantasy football like Jim and Jeff, our guests tonight, you can do so. myffpc.com/dynasty. Plenty of orphans out there that need a good team, and you get a pretty good deal on them as well. Best ball is available at the $35.77 and $250 price range. Superflex is double ups and everything all available at myffpc.com. Your Valentine's Day weekend officially starts.
This has been
now.
another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com that was broadcast live and heard around the world. Eric and Dave will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from a guest much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
We're on the cement floor, even more so if we on tour. Me and E explore the country, wondering about the evening before. Trying to explain where the time went, while other rappers find a studio to grind in. Kinda like.
Was your wife thrilled when you told her that you wouldn't have to do a show tomorrow night?
She just laughed. She couldn't care less.
So you guys aren't even doing anything?
We might go out to eat somewhere.
By the way, says the guy who's going ice fishing with his idiot friends and not spending Valentine's Day with us.
Yeah, what does your wife think about that? She's like, oh, just...
well, I sent her whenever one of us has something going on, we send each other a Google invite. So I sent her the Google invite, and she accepted it right away. And then she replied back. She's like, Valentine's Day? Really? I'm like, hey, man, what can I tell you?
Your friends all single? I mean,
no, everybody it's 7 of us that go up, and we are all married. And I was not the one who chose this
it's
weekend.
It's an artificial holiday made up by Hallmark or whatever. Anyway.
Valentine's Day is?
Oh, wait, that's Sweetest Day.
Sweetest Day for sure.
But whatever.
I don't know. Maybe Valentine's Day.
Valentine is a saint or whatever, but whatever.
I'm gonna have to look up the etymology or the mythology behind Valentine's Day. I have no idea how it became a holiday.
Yeah.
That's my project for this weekend when I'm sitting out freezing my tuchus off on the ice.
And get it back to me.
No problem. Sounds good. Thanks for listening, everybody.